Kuldeep Yadav's having the best season of his IPL career so far. There are a lot of spinners in this IPL like Noor Ahmed, Krunal Pandya, Kuldeep Yadav, Varun Chakravarti, even Sai Kishore, who are having a blockbuster of an IPL season. But there are two spinners in the name of Kuldeep Yadav and Varun Chakravarti who are having a tremendous season so far. And it's not just in terms of the amount of wickets they're taking, but also in terms of economy, the way they're able to restrict the batter from scoring runs. Before we talk about Kuldeep Yadav and Varun Chakravarti, their actions, the pitch maps, the statistics, hit that subscribe button. Let's start off with Kuldeep Yadav, right? Someone who's traditional, someone who's a left-arm Chinaman, and such a beautiful bowler to even watch. Statistically, however, he's not just done well, this has been the best IPL season so far for him. In the top 10 wicket takers for a spinner in this IPL, he has the best economy of 6.5 after 9 matches. It's insane when you think about this. In the 9 matches that he has played, there have been 4 occasions where he gave less than 6 runs in the 4 overs that he had bowled in that match. And it's not just this. In the 2 matches where he didn't get a wicket, he still gave less than 8.25 runs per over. All of these numbers are insane if you think about it, especially for a spinner. Of course, his economy is great and all that, but he's also third in the list in the amount of wickets for a spinner in this IPL by taking 12 wickets with an average of just 19.6. If you look at the combination between averages and economy, this is by far his best season so far. And out of all deliveries that he has bowled in this IPL, 37% of his deliveries have been dot balls. Now these are his statistics, right? It's the result of what he's been able to do. But let's have a look at what he is doing, especially at his action, and then we will go on to the pitch maps. Now, like I said, Kuldeep Yadav is someone who has a very traditional action, and you can see that in his run-up, in his load, in his stride, and we are going to go through all of that. Something to note here is that during Kuldeep Yadav's run-up, to a left-hand batter, he's traditionally very straight, but when you look at him bowl to a right-hand batter, he runs in an angle, which then allows him to play with the angle of the ball, but also helps him get more revolutions on the ball itself. Now, when you look at Kuldeep Yadav's action, and this is against Ryan Rickelton, the Mumbai Indians opening batter, who is a left-handed batter, you will realize that Kuldeep Yadav does have a pretty high jump. And he is a side-on bowler, which means that more often than not, his landing foot is almost parallel to the crease, and his non-bowling arm, like you can see here, goes across his head. He's also someone who started using his body a lot more. We have made an entire video on Kuldeep Yadav and how he's changed as compared to the couple of seasons ago where he was struggling to take wickets. But he is a left-arm spinner, a traditional wrist spinner who tries to turn the ball away from the left-hander and into the right-hander. And because of all of this, he uses his body a lot more. As you can see, his front knee is high up. He's trying to use his hip a lot to get revolutions on the ball. And it's not just revolution. When you use your body as a spinner, you're trying to get revolutions, of course. You're trying to turn the ball as much as you can, but you're also looking to flight the ball, get the ball to dip. And all of this can only happen if you put a lot of your body behind that ball. And that's exactly what Kuldeep Yadav's doing here. Everything else apart from that is the same. Of course, he's bowling a googly here. And this is Kuldeep Yadav to the left-handers. Like I said, when he's bowling against the right-handers, his run-up is a little angled. It comes from away from the umpire. Almost everything apart from that is very, very similar. He's still the side-on bowler that we know. He still had that high knee. And he uses a lot of his body behind that action, because of which when you see his follow through, that is the movement a bowler makes after releasing the ball, you will realize that he puts in a lot of force behind the ball, which is what is so beautiful about Kuldeep Yadav, because for someone who was traditionally very slow, now because he uses his body so much, he can vary his pace a lot more than he used to before. He can bowl those quicker ones, which is close to 100 kilometers per hour, and then slow it down, which is about 70 kilometers per hour. He plays around in those 30 kilometers range, which is great to see Kuldeep Yadav do. Now this is Kuldeep Yadav and his action, right? Let's look at his pitch maps and figure out what is working for him against the left and the right hand batters. Now, something I did talk about in the previous video that we made regarding Bhuvneshwar Kumar and the fast bowlers in the power play is making sure you have clusters. And as much as it's T20 cricket, clusters are very important because it shows consistency and it shows that what you're doing is working. And that's exactly what you can see with Kuldeep Yadav too. This is against the left-hand batters. As you can see, there is a cluster around the off stump. Usually this happens because he's trying to turn the ball away from the left-hand batters, but there is also a smaller cluster outside the off stump, And this is because if he's turning the ball away, he wants the batter to reach for the ball. And usually, especially in T20 cricket with the batters going around, they tend to not use their feet as much, because of which when he throws the ball far away from the batter, they are usually throwing the bat at it without using their feet. This is when Kuldeep Yadav also brings in his googlies and tries to bring the ball back against the left-hand batters and get them out LBW or bowled, like we just saw against Ryan Rickelton. And this is what Kuldeep Yadav is able to do so well, and he's even known for, is his consistency. When you go from here to the clusters he has against the right-hand batters, it's even more insane. Now, naturally, of course, he's bowled a lot more deliveries against the right-hand batters, but something to note here is that as compared to the left-hand batters, he's attacking the stumps a lot more against the right-hand batters. Now, this is essentially for the same thing. When he's bowling stump to stump and bringing the ball in, they're forced to play on the front foot. They're also forced to make sure that the bat is away from the pad, because in case they do miss it, they don't want to get out LBW, and we know Kuldeep Yadav is able to do that against the right-hand batters. But even with this, when a ball is coming from an angle, keep in mind that Kuldeep Yadav does bowl over the wicket to right-hand batters as well. There are times when the batter is playing for the ball coming in, but you know his googlies are decisive enough for batters to not pick it up, and they either get an outside edge or mistime the ball or not play on the merit of the ball, and Kuldeep Yadav yet again gets a wicket. Now, the same thing, like I said, against the left-hand batters applies here too. Of course, there's a cluster around the middle stump, but there's a smaller cluster not just outside the off stump, but also in the leg stump. Now, you would generally think that this is a bad delivery, but as you can see from the outcomes and when you look at the pitch map again, there are hardly any boundaries that he's given when he pitches the ball outside the leg stump against the right-hand batters, because usually he's not only bowling according to the field, but a lot of these balls would be turning away from the right-hander. This is when he bowls those googlies, making sure that the batter has to play at them. And this is what is bringing Kuldeep Yadav so much success in this IPL, and that is him making sure majority of the balls that he bowls to a batter, they are forced to play at it. And this is where things become a little more interesting, because we go from a traditional bowler like Kuldeep Yadav to another wrist spinner, or someone who uses his wrists and fingers quite a bit and has a blockbuster season not just in this IPL so far, but also playing for the Indian team prior to that. Of course, I'm talking about Varun Chakravarti. After 9 matches, he has an economy of 6.8, which is the second best on the list of the top 10 wicket takers for a spinner. Unlike Kuldeep Yadav, who has gone 4 matches giving less than 6 runs per over, Varun Chakravarti has gone 5 matches giving less than 6 runs per over. He's also 5th in the list in terms of wicket takers for a spinner in this IPL by taking 11 wickets with an average of 21.8. Again, these numbers are insane. What makes all of this even better is that combination of economy and the average. This isn't even his best season so far. And again, unlike a Kuldeep Yadav who has a dot ball percentage of 37%, Varun Chakravarti triumphs that too with a dot ball percentage of 39.3%. Now, all of these are stats. The reason I'm talking about Kuldeep Yadav and Varun Chakravarti is because they're the two spinners in the top 10 wicket takers list with an economy of around 6. But not just this. When you look at them and compare them, you will realize that how different these two spinners are, especially Varun Chakravarti, who's mostly known to be a mystery spinner. Not only does he use his wrist at release point, he also uses his fingers quite a bit. He can turn the ball both ways, and he is much quicker than Kuldeep Yadav. What's interesting is if you look at their action, you will realize how different they actually are. When you look at Varun Chakravarti's action, you know that his jog to the crease, now this could be for any spinner, but what makes it very different is his stride, the release point, and the way he uses his body. Unlike Kuldeep Yadav, Varun Chakravarti doesn't necessarily use a lot of his body because he doesn't need to, because of the kind of spinner he is. Now, when you look at his stride, or when you look at him landing on the crease, he doesn't have the biggest of jumps. He has a mixed action because he doesn't have a front on action, which would mean that his landing foot will be facing the batter. He doesn't have a side on action because his landing foot is not necessarily parallel to the crease. He has sort of a mixed action. Even if you look at his non-bowling arm, it's not across, it's beside, which would then mean he has a front on action. But then when you look at his foot, there's a bit of a thing going on. So usually you would call this a mixed action. And this is where things get a little more interesting. Unlike a Kuldeep Yadav, Varun Chakravarti doesn't necessarily use his front leg a lot. But what he does really well he is able to release the ball from the highest point. He has a very high arm action. His arm is overextended to a point where it's almost angled towards the left hand side, which means he's trying to get the maximum amount of height he possibly can while releasing the ball. And because he's so quick through his action and so quick in the air, it is very difficult for a batter to get underneath the ball. And I'm not even talking about batter trying to read the ball off his hand, because it's almost impossible because of the speed at which he bowls. Now that's Varun Chakravarti's action. Let's go from that to the pitch maps and let's find out what he's doing against the left hand and the right hand batters. He hasn't bowled much against the left hand batters, roughly around just 36 balls. It is all over the place, but something you can notice is they haven't hit a lot of boundaries against him, only 4 according to the pitch map. But when you go from the left hand batters to the right hand batters, things drastically change. Of course, he's bowled a lot more deliveries against the right-hand batters, and of course, you will start seeing clusters. And he is not someone who can bowl stump to stump because of the kind of deliveries and variations he has. So what he tries to do is just pull the ball outside the off stump, make the batter reach for the ball, and make sure the pitch is at play. He's not bowling it very full, where the batter can just smother the spin, but he's bowling it a little short. It's mostly between the full and good length, where the batter can't easily reach the pitch of the ball. If he needs to, he would need to step out. And because of this, he is making sure the pitch is at play. His variations are at play. He's making the ball turn if he needs to, making the ball come back in or even out. And this is what is working for someone like a Varun Chakravarti. His variations, the pace at which is bowling, unlike a Kuldeep Yadav who's bowling a little more slower and making sure that the batter reaches for the ball outside the off stump. Now, this was us geeking out about Varun Chakravarti and Kuldeep Yadav. What are so different about them, but what makes them so similar is the fact that they still have clusters. And I talked about it in the fast bowling video too. As much as it's T20 cricket, as much as you want to do different things, you still need to be consistent with one thing, because that one thing will work. And if it works, you have to try doing it again and again. And that is essentially what bowling is, even in the T20 format. Of course, these are just 2 spinners who have had good seasons so far. There are other spinners too. If you want us to make another video on other spinners and what's working for them versus what's not working for them, comment down below. But this has been a video on Kuldeep Yadav and Varun Chakravarti and what's working for them and how are they so different. Like, share and subscribe, all that good stuff. All of our links are in the description below. If you haven't followed us on Instagram or Twitter, the links are in the description. If you haven't followed us on our WhatsApp channel, do that too. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.